Hey guys, Jacob from Deltologic here, and today I will show you how to connect to Amazon Selling Partner API, Amazon SP API. This is one of the most requested topics that comes from you and from our clients at Deltologic. Pretty much Amazon Selling Partner API is very messy, especially the documentation, and it's very hard to connect. So in this video, I'll walk you through the documentation. We'll talk about marketplaces IDs, different endpoints, how to create the IAM user, IAM roles, policies, how to create the private app and connect those two together. And later on, we'll go to Postman and create a sample request to the API. By the end of this video, we'll have a very nice Postman collection that you can reuse and make requests to any endpoint from a Selling Partner API that you want. And of course, if you need any help, let me know in the comments or contact us at contact@deltologic.com. Pretty much this is what we do at Deltologic. We help sellers and vendors to connect to SP API, build applications and SaaS products around that. So if you feel like you are lost, just let me know. And that being said, let's jump to the video. Alright, so first of all, let me show you the end result. So you'll actually see what we'll achieve by the end of the video. This is the Postman collection that we are using at Deltologic to do some sample requests for our clients. And first of all, we'll have a collection with authentication. So we'll be able to get the STS token and we'll be able to get the access token, as you actually see here. It will be blurred for the API. It's one of the hardest part actually to do when it comes to connecting to the SP API. Even though you configure everything correctly, people usually get lost when signing off their request. This is like a standard AWS procedure to actually do a request. It's very secure and that's probably the standard. But anyway, once we have those two, you'll be able to do any request to the SP API you want. So for example, here we just did a request to Orders API. As you see, actually, I'm using my account which have 0 orders, but obviously when you are a seller, you'll have this information with like orders with a full list. Here, for example, we can go to like Sales API, and of course, this is like a different endpoint, but we are using very nice variables, and it's pretty much all being done for us. So it's very nice and very easy. So let's try to do a request. As you see, on this account, I don't have any orders, but the purpose of this video is just to show you what you can achieve with a Postman. And obviously you can just put it to your code, to any kind of code, because previously on this channel I showed you how to do it using Python and the library that is doing it for us. And this is all being done from scratch. So you can also code it in a JS and a Python, a C++, you name it. All right, so let's go to the documentation first. So currently we are at Selling Partner API documentation main page. If you actually watched my previous video about getting orders to Google Sheets, this page is totally different. They actually did a huge progress and that's actually super nice. But still, I think it's very messy and I think this video will really help you. So once we land on this page, we can go to documentation and we can actually go through the developer guide step by step and connect to the SP API. So first, actually, I prepared some tabs for you. We'll go through them. So the first one is actually, what is the Selling Partner API? Just in short, for all of you here who are for the first time, this is REST-based Selling Partner API. This is a new API. Previously, there was Amazon MWS. Actually, they have the migration guide here on the documentation. They pretty much just tell you that you should migrate, but they don't necessarily tell you how to convert any endpoints and how you convert your old application, because obviously you've built them and you need to also convert the old logic to the new logic. So if you're also struggling to migrate your old MWS app to the new SP API app, just let us know. We'll be happy to help. Anyway, let's get back to the main part of the video. Pretty much there's not much to go through. We can pretty much jump to the endpoints. This is something very important. So depending on your marketplace, you'll have to do a request to a different endpoint, and they are only changed with a few letters. So for example, for North America, you have this NA here. For Europe, you have EU, and for Far East, you have FE. And here you have the AWS regions, which actually are very important. I will be using them also in a Postman. It comes actually from AWS regions. So for example, if you have an EC2, you probably are familiar that you can have an EC2 instance on the EU West 1. Now let's jump to a marketplaces IDs. This is also very important because depending on where you sell, you'll have to put a different variable for request. So for example, let's say you are selling in Europe on 2 marketplaces, Germany and Italy. And by doing the request for orders, for example, you'll have to do them with 2 different IDs, this ID and this ID. Now let's jump to the determine app type. Here, actually, let me tell you a little bit because this is like super important. So public apps. When you're building public apps, this means that you probably have some SaaS, so software as a service. Probably you are reselling your solution to other sellers. So for example, if you build like a repricer and you want other sellers to use it, then you'll have to publish your app for public apps. And for public apps, you have also different public apps because your public app can be unlisted and can be listed. And if it's listed, it's actually on a Amazon App Store. I've built on this channel one scraper for all of the apps. We're just pretty much gathering information about all of the companies that publish their apps. If you also want to see it, you can check it out. But anyway, that's about public apps. Then you have private seller apps. Those are pretty much the nicest to start because you cannot really do anything bad with them. You can actually try a lot of new things there, and you can still authorize multiple clients. I think that there's a limit up to 10 or 25. They are constantly changing it. Later in this video, actually, we'll see that. But anyway, once you start it, you create the private app. It can be in a draft mode, and you can get as many information and as many access as you want. For example, for PYI, those are like private informations about the sellers, such as addresses. Then normally Amazon requires you to fill the forms and describe why you want this information. And if the app is public, it's extremely hard to gather this information. However, if it's private, you can get those information easier. You just need to explain Amazon why you're using this information, and pretty much they will give you the access right away. We help with our clients to get the PII access and RDT access many times. So if you struggle with that, just let me know in the comments and I'm sure we'll be able to help you. And then you have also private vendor apps. For private vendor apps, they are very similar. Each app that has a different workflow and requirements. Now let's jump to the meat and potatoes. So registering as a developer. The first thing you have to do in order to create your app and to get the access to the API, you actually need to create your developer profile. And again, you have different kind of developer profiles for different kind of apps. And pretty much they tell you what to do, and we'll just do that right now. So we'll be registering for a private developer for a private seller application. What you have to do is you have to sign to the Seller Central using developer credentials, navigate to develop apps, pick the develop apps and fill the form. And once you fill the form, it has to go through the review that is done by Amazon team. Let me show you how this looks like. So as you see here, we are in a Amazon Seller Central. This is our account. We don't really sell anything here. We just build the apps and test the API for our clients. So let's go and put the apps here. And here you will see apps and services, go to develop apps. And you'll have to create your developer account. I actually have a public developer account that is also being under the review. But just to show you, I think there will be a button for you to create this app, and you'll have like pretty much the same form as we have. So this is the developer profile form, and you will have to fill up all of the information and also explain them why you need particular categories. So for example, for restricted accesses, it's much harder to get this, but for all of the above, you get the access right away. And if you want to have the restricted access, you actually have to tell Amazon about your use cases. So for example, here, POI is required to generate shipping labels and send Amazon orders to customer, right? This is like what we put here to gather the access, and then there's actually much more forms that you will have to fill. But we don't have to focus on it in this particular video. We'll go with the easiest part. So normally just create this developer profile, pick a few of those points, and continue with me. Let's assume that Amazon actually approved your profile. So you probably got the email, you have your developer account, and now you can create the app. All right, so registering your application, how to register your application for use. As you see, before you register your application, you will have to configure your IAM policies and entities. This means that we'll have to go to AWS and do it from there first. So before we create add new app client, we'll have to go to AWS. All right, so now we are on an AWS site. So if you don't have the account, you actually have to go and create a new one. You just simply go create a new account, and this will be your root user. The good practice is to, once you have a root account, create the additional account and then just give it few permissions. But in this particular case, you can also just do it on your main root account. It will be much easier. So I already have an account. So let's log into your root account, and from there I will show you step by step how to create additional account with a programmatic access. So you can actually have an API access through credentials that are in your environment variables. Once you created it, let's log in. You click root user, put your email, put your password, And now we are on a main page. So first we'll have to go to IAM user. So let's go and click it. As you see, I already have some of the users. You'll probably have 0 and you'll just have to create add user. I'll put a YouTube SP API video and I'll have to click provide user access to the AWS console. We'll go and click I want to create an IAM user. We'll go auto-generated password. I won't click this. I'll simply delete this user after the video. So YouTube SP API video. Next, I will give it actually the admin access just for purposes of this video, and I will click create user. Now we have our user. A very important thing is to download the CSV file with our credentials just to be able to actually log in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to log into this new user. Sign out of your root account and log into your new account. Sign into the console. Now open your file. So you'll have actually the link in this console sign in URL. If you click it, it will open automatically with the account ID filled in. The only thing you have to do is to fill the IAM username and the password that was automatically generated. I will click sign in. Now once we have our account that is newly created, additional thing that we need is to go to IAM user and give it a programmatic access. So I'll go to click a user. Go to my user that I just created, YouTube SP API video. So what we're going to do is we'll have to give it the access key. So as you see here is use access keys to send programmatic calls to AWS from the AWS CLI, AWS tools, PowerShell, and so on, right? So the most important is AWS API calls. Let's create access key. Here, let's click local code. I understand and I want to proceed. Next, leave it. Create access key. We have our access key and secret access key. And those are very important because we'll need them later in the Postman to make a successful request. Let's download the CSV file. And now we have our access key and secret access key. Let's click done. And let's get back to documentation. Click create and configure IAM roles. So this step 1 is done. Create an AWS account. Create IAM user. This is also done. This is all actually what we went through. So we got the access key, we created it. We got the programmatic access as well. We downloaded it. They actually mentioned that this is the only place where you can download your credentials. Later on, you cannot actually see it, and that's true. And now we'll have to go and create the IAM policy. Go to the AWS Management Console, IAM Console, Policies, choose Create Policy, choose JSON, and paste this code. So let me copy the code. Let's go to Users, again, Policies, create policy, JSON, put it there. Let's create next. Policy name, let's do, I will do YouTube. Let's actually do selling partner API as they did. I would just do selling partner API underscore YouTube. Just so I know, you probably can leave just the first part and create policy. Now our policy is created. So let's go to the next point. Create an IAM role. We have to go to the roles. Let's go back. There, roles. We have to create the role. Now here they say this account. So AWS account. We go for this account. Next, add permissions. So we'll have to find our permission. It's a YouTube. As you see, as a selling partner API YouTube. Let's click it. And let's next. Here for the role, I will do exactly the same. Selling partner API underscore YouTube. As you see here, it's all good. We can create the role. All right, role is created. Now we have to add the AWS STS policy to our IAM user. In order to do that, we'll have to go to permission tab in our users. So user, YouTube SP API video. This is the permission. We have to go and click add inline policy. Let me double check. Create policy, choose a service, add inline policy. Exactly. Choose STS service. Okay. Now what they want is they want only to get under the actions the right permission and assume role. Assume role. And I'm pretty sure it's done. Next, click resources. Okay. Review policy. Resources. And here in resources, they should add ARN. And here, what we have to do is we have to put our role. So it's a selling partner API underscore YouTube. Let's put add and let's review the policy. All right, it's there. And let's create the review policy. I'll put SP API YouTube create the policy. All right, there it is. Now there's an additional step which is optional. We don't have to go through it. We actually successfully accomplished the first part, which was creating the IAM roles and assigning all of the roles and policies. Let's go back to registering your application. So now once we actually done, we can finally create our new app. So let's create it here. Let's put a YouTube app. Let's create the SP API type IAMRN. This is basically from what we have here. So in IAM roles, this is super important. It's so many times actually I made a huge mistake and I put user instead of the role. So just don't make this mistake. Take this, copy. Now go back here, paste it, put it to sellers, pick the APIs that you want. I won't delegate access to PI to another developer's application. And for this, we don't need it. This is basically if you want to, in your app, gather other additional users registered to your app. We don't need it right now. This is for authorization workflow. I will make sure to actually create a tutorial on it. In the next video, let's create save and exit. We have our new YouTube app. And now let's connect to it through Postman. All right, guys, so now let's actually create the request to SP API using Postman. So for this, what is actually useful, it's Amazon's documentation page about using Postman. It's not really, let's say, fully useful because if you just try to go through it, you probably encounter some problems. That's why actually we did it. That's why basically in this video, I'll show you a little bit different path, but we'll reuse some of the parts. So for example, in order to create the request, actually if you deep dive in the documentation, you will learn that you have to generate AWS access token using the Postman. And this is the token that you will use to gather all of the requests to create a request to any endpoint you want. And you will have to request AWS STS and generate a temporary credentials. So this is basically whenever you do a request via Postman, Python, C++, Java, doesn't really matter. That's how you do it. Basically, once you have all of your credentials, you have to use them to get the access token, and you have to actually, in addition, get the temporary credentials. This is like super confusing, and I know that a lot of people have a headache from it. I had it, and there are libraries that actually do it under the hood, and the library that I used. So for example, in the Python SP API from Sailweaver, actually that's Michel. Michel, if you watch it, hi. What the creator did is he created functionality under the hood that you don't have to worry about. But this is super confusing because you cannot rely on additional libraries when you build a fully production system to your clients. You have to actually create it manually from scratch. That's why in this tutorial, I will show you how to do it. So going back, you will see that they give you a nice endpoint, which actually does it. With the post request, you get the access token, and therefore later on you can create the endpoint. So let me walk you through step by step how to do it. We're going first to create a new workspace. Let's name it YouTube Amazon SP API tutorial. I'll put it personal, create workspace. I'll create a new collection. The first collection I will call authentication, and I will add one request. This will be first request. I will call it STS. This will be to actually gather the STS credentials. So the access key ID, secret access key, and session token. And before we continue, I will set up our environment credentials. So first, click on this button here. I will have environment variables and global variables. Let's create the environment variables first. So you can easily switch actually between markets. I will call it EU West 1. Now we'll start adding the variables. This host and STS token I'll actually gather from documentation. I was showing this to you. We're using the one from the EU market and the marketplace as well. I showed you in the beginning. I took it from there. So again, the endpoints and the marketplaces. And now going back to the documentation, I actually got this stsamazon.com as the endpoint. So let's save it. This is our EOS 1 environment, and let's pick it. Now let's create the global variables. Now, the most important thing, let's fill our variables with the proper values. The first one is the role ARN. This is the one we actually put to our app. IAM user access key. This is what we extracted from the CSV file when we created the IAM user. IAM user secret key. Again, this is from the CSV file that we gather from the beginning of the video. STS access key, STS secret key, secret access key, and STS session token, those are the actually keys that are temporary, and we have to get them from making the request to the Amazon. And in Postman, you actually can create tests and you can override the variables. That's why actually I provide you with this video. So for now, we leave them empty because they will be overwritten after the request is being done successfully. Now, LWA ID, this you have to take from here. So LWS credentials view, the first one is the ID. LWA secret, this is from here. The refresh token, this one is tricky because you have to go to the app, click authorize, pick the market. So in our case, it's Marketplace Poland. Click authorize the app, copy the refresh token, and the access key. This is again something that we'll get from Amazon and we have to override. However, this will be done through the second endpoint. Let's save it. Let's go back to STS. Now let's go back to the Amazon page, and this is something that actually we will need. They have this nice link and actually we'll be using it. Of course, we have to replace the RN. I will show you how we did. We'll use the variables. So STS host, this is what we had. So the one for the EU West, and IAM role, this is the one that comes from the global credentials. Those are added automatically here. You can of course try to change them if you want. I wouldn't suggest. This is what Amazon suggested. That's better. For the role session name test, I have no idea why is it like that. This is how Amazon did it as well. This works, so don't ask me, ask them. Now for the authorization, this is very important. What we're going to do is we're going to click AWS signature, request header. Now access key, it automatically got IAM user access key, IAM user secret. Here we have the region, STS, and this is the session token. So it actually got everything correctly. Headers, they automatically. Body, nothing. Settings, test. This is something that we'll do in a moment. First, let's actually create, let's actually send it. As you see, we actually made the successful call to the Amazon, and we got the access key ID, secret access key, and session token. All of this is something that we will need to successfully request data from Amazon SP API. As you see, this will expire soon. Now, what we have to do is we have to store all of those credentials into our global variables under those three STS credentials. And for this, we'll write the tests. All right, actually you have very nice snippets here if you want to actually understand it more in detail, or you can also go to documentation of Postman and read how to write the tests. They are very handy and you can easily use them and override the credentials in a Postman. But so what we're going to do is we gotta check if our request is successful, if it's 200, and then if the content there is present. And what we're going to do in the next three functions is to store the credentials. So STS access key, STS secret key, and the session key. So first we have to get the response and we have to parse it in the XML to JSON. Once we gather it, we are actually giving the credentials, checking it, and then setting the global STS access key with it. So access key and all of those, they are pretty much the same, just for different variables. Now let's check it out. We got the test results. As you see, it got the test 200, the content type is present, and we stored all of the credentials successfully. So now we have all of the credentials. However, this is not the end. What we have to do is, going back to the documentation, we got those. However, we still need to get the access token to actually make the requests. So this is the last environment credential, which is still empty. And for this, we actually need to create a new request. Parents empty. Authorization we inherit from the parent. Headers, body is very important. Here we actually have to go pick this and add some things. So as you see here, in order to get the access token to make any call to the API, first we have to use our credentials that are temporary. Okay, we have to add the URL, and now for the tests, what we'll do in a moment, actually you will see it, but we'll pretty much set the access token. It's the same functionality that we had. We got the response in a JSON, and this time we check if we got it, and then we are putting the access token as a variable. So let's check it out. All right, so as you see here, we got the access token, refresh token, and it's a buried token. And now we finally can, I don't know why actually it didn't work. I think it's like a Postman thing that sometimes maybe I have to save it. Yeah, all right, now it is. So yeah, you have to save it. But anyway, we finally have our core of making successful requests. This was like super tough. So let's try and make a request to Amazon. Let's go to, for example, Orders API. Going to go to Orders API v model, not the model, but use case. Let's go, for example, to Orders, retrieving the orders. You have to get orders requests. All right, there is the request example. You get the orders. So let's actually go here and let's create a new collection. I will call it orders. Okay. Now let's create a new request in this. I just double check here. We actually need the AWS signature. All right. Now we need the access key. This is the new key that we gathered. We need a secret key. Again, it's the STS one. It's not the initial one. For the rigging, we have the variable. For the service name, for the service name, we need the execute API and we need the session token. This is super important and this is hard. If you actually go back here for the sample request, you will see all of this, right? So you need the service name called execute API, and you need the special headers. So let's go back there. Now let's save it. Let's create a new request. I will call it orders. Now what we're going to do is I'm pretty much going to put the URL. So we need a host and then the endpoint. This is endpoint from documentation, as you see here. Selling partner, this is the endpoint / orders, marketplace, and so on. This is all actually here. 2 more headers in the accept one. This will be application JSON. And we need the EXAMZ access token. And this is the access token. And I know it's super confusing, but we finally add there. And we can even add some tests to it. So we can add the check. And if we actually contain the orders. And as you see here, this is actually a success. As I told you, okay, we don't have any orders. So this does fail. No, normally we put it for our clients. That's why I copied here. just for you. This would normally work. We don't need that. I can just delete this test, and this will be fine. This is just again tests are not that necessary. We have an empty account at Deltologic. We are not the sellers. And then what you can do is pretty much you can create a new collections. You can go explore the APIs. You can I don't know, like do a different requests for different things. For example, you can go to sales. You can get the sales order metrics. Is all the same. At this point, it's extremely easy. All you have to do is pretty much inherit always the parameters, authorization, headers, and then you just need to play around with the API. But you actually have the main logic here for the STS token and for the authentication for the access token. That was quite comprehensive tutorial, but I hope you guys enjoy it. Again, it's super confusing. I know that Amazon tries their best to explain how to do it, but it's still tricky. And you are still struggling, or if you feel like you need help with a development with your app, or if you want to build some serious software, a solution that will be used by your clients, or you want to build a solution that you want to put to App Store, then you can easily contact us. We are here to help. Just let me know in the comments or go to our website, deltologic.com. Fill up the form, and I hope to see you soon, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I see you in the next one.